Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. So my name's Bill. I work at Evelo Electric Bicycles. I've been with them for about 6 years. The content of this presentation is kind of an overview. It's not a commercial, okay? It's intended to be informative. So as we're doing various, it's about teaching you about bikes. And I will say this, if you have questions, do hold them to the end. There's a very good chance I'll cover it before then, and I'm happy to, anything that you want to know afterwards, I'm happy to address. So this is not a commercial. It really is about, as you do your research, questions to ask and so forth, okay? So what is an electric bicycle, right? It's a bicycle that has a motor and a battery. Very simply, you get to choose how much you pedal. So there's kind of a misnomer out there that you won't get any exercise on an electric bike. You actually can. We have customers that have lost 100 pounds riding our e-bike. So it's not cheating. And we refer to them as a hill flattener, something where that hill that was an obstacle, that the kind of thing you look at and think about walking up on a regular bike. That's not the case anymore. The electric bike, you couple the motor with your pedaling efforts and you go right up to the top. So they're very utilitarian in that way. E-bikes have been really popular in Europe and Asia for a very long time. They're really starting to get traction here in the US. I've seen the growth personally in my time with the company. I could tell you that one of the things about the Asia market is the population of countries like China is so huge that the e-bike is a very real transportation alternative. And because they sell millions a year, the nexus of manufacturing of e-bikes is there. So a lot of people think, bikes are built in China because it's cheap. It's also where all the manufacturing is located because that's where most of them are being sold. They are gaining popularity in the US. They're getting better, and there's lots of choices. If you were to Google electric bikes, you're gonna be overwhelmed with information, okay? There's literally a new player almost every day because people are recognizing that it is a viable market from a business standpoint. So there's a lot of information out there, and hopefully what you see here in this presentation will help sort through some of that stuff, okay? So who uses electric bikes? So recreational riders, people that simply just want to go out, see the sunset, ride through the park, that kind of thing. Commuters, so increasingly in urban environments, especially where there's intense congestion, commuting on an electric bike because of the extended distance that you can ride, now it's a viable alternative to ride into work. And so commuters are using them. Parking is not an issue. I don't know where you folks live, but in a big city, you could be late for work because you couldn't find a parking spot. Of course, our favorite group of people, the RVers, right? Highly transportable. You could put them in your vehicle, and the close cousins to the folks in the RV community are boaters. So we do sell people with, large yachts and so forth that need some form of mobile transportation they can take with them. And lastly, we see a lot of folks that are returning to riding after many years. Sometimes it's a recommendation from their physician. You need to go out and get some exercise. You need to move that artificial hip, that artificial knee. But what's nice about the electric bike is that if you start having discomfort or whatever, the motor can get you home. So it really is a therapeutic device for a lot of people. So what is it that makes electric bikes unique? So this is kind of our Venn diagram comparing electric bikes with regular bicycles and what's similar and different about them. So electric bikes have power on demand. It makes it easier to climb hills. You could travel further without worrying about, can I get home if I go too far, right? Now a regular bicycle The propulsion is done just by the rider. You have no help. They're typically significantly lighter. If you've explored electric bikes at all, you know that they're heavy compared to traditional bicycles. And there's no electronics, so it's a simpler mechanism overall. What's similar about them are their looks, how they handle and the maneuverability, and most repairs. Now, with the one caveat, there is an electrical system that sometimes there are service issues related to the electrical system, so that is something that is unique to electric bikes. But most repairs, brake adjustments, all flat tires, all that stuff, the same across both. So there is a difference between electric bikes and motorized scooters. Electric bikes have pedals, and that's actually one of the definitions of an electric bike. It must have fully functioning pedals. There are 3 classifications now for electric bikes. Class 1 and Class 3 are very similar in that they are throttle only. They only have, they're pedal assist only, which means there is no throttle on them. The difference between 1 and 3 is that Class 1 is capped at 20 miles an hour, whereas a Class 3 e-bike can go up to 28 miles an hour. Now, Class 2 are bikes that have pedal assist, and sometimes throttle and pedal assist. So as you're going down the road, you can be pedaling, and there's switching mechanisms that detect your pedaling action and will activate the motor. So it's your effort plus the motor together get the total output at the rear wheel.
My first one was that way. The motor would shut off if you stopped pedaling.
Yes. And that's pretty typical. You want exactly, because you don't want you stop pedaling, you don't want the bike to rush you through the intersection, right? Now, it's one of the great things is they don't require a license, registration, or insurance. So for some folks, that's useful. If we sometimes have folks that reach out to us, hey, I lost my driver's license. I don't pass the vision test, so I can't drive anymore, but I still need to get around. And so it's a way to kind of continue your independence that way. I already mentioned electric bikes have a legal top speed of 28 in the US. Some classifications, it's just 20. Now, motorized scooters are considered Class 4 e-bikes. They typically don't have pedals. They do require license and registration, and they are treated similarly to a motorcycle. So there's additional expense with the license, registration, and so forth, and you need to be passing vision tests and so forth. We do not. Yeah, we're strictly e-bikes. Yep. So electric bikes are simple and efficient transportation at your destination, so it's easy to bring with you. It can literally replace a bike or a car. Imagine that if you didn't have to tow a car behind you. What would that mean for your mileage as you're moving across the country? What would that mean for just backing up alone, right? If you didn't have to deal with that tow behind. So it's pretty nice if you don't have to bring a car with you. You can exercise on an electric bike, so you're away from your home gym, you don't have your usual workout, and you can definitely get exercise while you're out and traveling. You can get just the right amount of exercise for you, right? Whether you choose your level of pedal assist or how much you rely on the throttle to get you where you need to go. You get to select how much exercise you do or don't get. So this is something that really stands out. A lot of times bikes are bought in pairs, kind of the his and hers thing, right? Now, if you think about being on a traditional bicycle, you're like, hey honey, let's go for a bike ride. And naturally, one person is stronger and faster than the other, and typically it turns into this situation where somebody's 3 blocks ahead going, oh, hurry up, and the other one's behind going, I feel bad, and would you slow down? And then they finally meet up, and then there's maybe a little bit of conflict, and that romanticized view of a bike ride together suddenly turns into, a conversation, and nobody's having any fun. That changes on an electric bike. You could choose, one person can use the motor less, one person can use the motor more, and suddenly you're rolling down the beach together going, look at the beautiful sunset. And it really is transformational, and it becomes that idealistic view of a bike ride together that we all think of when you head out. And you really don't have to worry about hills or distance. Especially in places you don't know. You get you're in an unfamiliar area. It might just be as simple as the park that you've got your camp set up, and you don't know where you're going. Oh, geez, you can afford to get lost for a few miles because you've got this motor and battery that are going to get you back to where you need to be. So bringing your electric bike with you. A couple of ways to accomplish this. There are platforms that will slide into the hitch receiver on the back of your rig, and the best ones cradle the bike by the wheels, because we mentioned earlier electric bikes are heavy. Not all bike racks can support the additional weight of one or especially 2 electric bikes. So there are special racks, and if you're in the market for one, just be mindful of the weight limits. So that's one option. And you don't need to place the vehicles inside the RV, although you certainly could even if you had a full-size bike. Putting them on the rack is relatively easy. You just do it from the rear of the vehicle, not terribly difficult. And the platform mounts, can accommodate the extra weight of the electric bikes. Now, if you wanted to put your bike inside your RV, you can definitely do that with a full-size bicycle. But also, there are folding bikes in the market. If you are putting inside, you don't need any added accessories. And a folding model, such as the one depicted here, really takes up very little space, and you can tuck it away. I know some people are fitting them in a closet, or if they are taking a tow-along vehicle, they're putting the folding bike inside the tow vehicle. So a lot of options if you go with a folding bike. So it's a great activity to do as a couple. It equalizes strengths, as I mentioned earlier. You now just have a new way to explore places. You can go places you can't go in your car. You can go down that narrow pathway and so forth. It allows great access. You can go further. The potential to replace the tow car. And they're really easy to charge, store. The chargers are very simple. They're not unlike what I have for my laptop. They're just a little bigger. Plugs into a 110 outlet. You can charge them anywhere. Most bikes you can actually remove the battery from the bicycle for convenience, so you could have your bike on the back of your RV, but be charging inside on an inverter as you're traveling. So that's very much an option there. RVs and electric bikes, it really is a beautiful combination. So about choosing the right bike for yourself. So questions to think about: how big of a bike can I carry? What are your space restrictions? What kind of strategies do you have for transportation? What kind of riding style do you like? Do you want, some people really like to be almost in a sitting position, sitting very upright. That's easier on the lower back, you get better visibility. Other folks want a more sporting position, more aerodynamic, and want to be leaned forward a little bit. So that's something to consider. Do you prefer a bike that's easy to get on and off? So there's 2 basic categories of frame style. You've got a step-through frame, or what some people would refer to a women's frame, where you can, as you're mounting the bike, you can literally just step through like so. or the more traditional men's style frame with a horizontal top tube where you're swinging your leg up and over. So it's something to consider what your personal needs are and how much access do you need and how easily do you need to get on and off. And then how far do you want to go on a typical ride? That's going to help you determine battery size and power requirements on your bike.
So you could change battery size on the bike. If you wanted more power, you could get a bigger battery.
Sometimes, within some certain confines. So primarily you need to be matching the voltage of the system, but you would increase amp hours. I'll get to batteries here in a second. So things to consider: how big is the bike? What style of bike? Stylistically, what do you want? Something like a cruiser, a mountain bike, something that folds? Do you need a tricycle? Some people, we do sell a lot of electric tricycles. So I just covered the step through versus step over style. Battery size, which we'll get to here in a moment. This is primarily in reference to range, how far you can go on a singular charge. Obviously, a bigger battery means more range. And how much power output. Sorry, I bumped that one, skipped ahead. Oops. Oh, wow, that skipped way ahead on me. There we go. So in terms of power output, more power is primarily it's about hill climbing, but also acceleration and your top average speed. So do you want to cruise along at 20 miles an hour, or are you happy cruising along at 15 miles an hour? Power output of the bike will determine that. So types of motors. There's mid-drive motors, which this is a picture of a mid-drive motor. So the motor is actually right there by the crank and pedals. A hub drive motor is actually in the center of the wheel, right by the axle of either the front or the rear wheel. Rear is more common, but there's definitely front wheel hub drive motors. So some of the differences here: mid-drive systems are more powerful and efficient, but they are more expensive. So if you were looking at two 500-watt motors, you're going to get greater range and efficiency out of the mid-drive version, but it will be more expensive. So different types of batteries. So lead acid batteries, or SLA, which stands for sealed lead acid. They're inexpensive. It's an older technology. I think you see them more on scooters, power wheelchairs, and so forth. It's really not a technology utilized very much anymore in the electric bike industry. Nickel type, so nickel cadmium, nickel metal hydride. Those are also fading with the advent of lithium ion. So you really don't see too much of those. Literally 90% of bikes on the market today use some type of lithium batteries, most commonly lithium ion. If you're somebody that's interested about the deeper levels of chemistry, we could touch that. That's a little outside the scope of this lecture, but we could certainly discuss that with you later on. Great safety, great range. They're shockingly lightweight for what they're capable of doing. Okay, battery size. So if you're a note taker, this is the time to pull out your pen and paper. Battery size. So it's measured in amp hours. So what that means is a 10 amp hour battery can sustain 10 amps of draw for, anybody want to guess how long? 1 hour. So 10 amps of draw. So then that follows if, let's say you were using less power, going a little bit slower, and you have the same battery, but you're drawing 5 amps. How long will that battery last? 2 hours, exactly, right? So that's kind of that part in a nutshell. The battery also is rated in voltage. And that most closely corresponds to power output. So a 36 volt battery is not as powerful as a 48 volt battery. So voltage is about power, amp hours is about range. When you're shopping around, the best way to kind of equalize that apples and oranges comparisons between different bikes and different companies, because some will tout, their amp hour, some will just talk about range, some will talk about their voltage. The easiest way to kind of get it down to a single number is to calculate the watt hours of a battery, and that's very simply the amp hours multiplied by the voltage. So an easy example, a 36 volt battery rated at 10 amp hours, 360 watt hours. You want to plan for the most common types of rides. You don't necessarily need the biggest, largest battery. Sometimes I do see people that, they're like, give me the best. And they buy a battery that's, good for 60 miles. They never go more than 5 miles in a day. And so this talks about it being, the heaviest part of the bicycle. It's also the most expensive part. It's literally about a third of the cost of your bike. So be mindful about what you need and because, we're all watching our pennies here. So there's really no need to buy more battery than is necessary. So in terms of drivetrains, two basic kinds. So there's externally geared. So the external derailleur, like that one, very commonly between 7 and 11 speeds. It's probably what you're most familiar with, and they're numbered, right? You move from gear 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the chain is literally moving from one cog to the other, and the cogs are different sized. Then there's internally geared hubs. So some of them actually have gears inside. A 3-speed hub would be such a beast, where you don't actually see the gears, they're all hidden inside, but it literally is making gear changes. There are also continuously variable transmissions, and what that means is there is a maximum, there's the high gear range and the low gear range, but everything in between, infinitely adjustable. So I like the analogy of a ramp versus stairs. So this gets there going upstairs. It goes from your highest gear ratio, you're on 6, then 5, then 4, right? Continuously variable transmission, you can be anywhere between the maximum and the minimum gear ratios.
The Prius car, I think, is a...
Yes, a CVT. Yeah, that's the best analogy. Subaru vehicles also use a CVT. Very smooth. These can be kind of chunky, especially under force. If you have a mid-drive motor that uses a derailleur, the shifts can be harsh because there's a lot of tension on the chain as it's trying to move from one cog to the other.
Is this that type of bike?
So that bike has a CVT. Yeah, that has a...
You have to have all the gears.
Correct, and we actually have one of those over at our booth. Yep. So purchasing an electric bike, kind of two ways to go in the market these days. You've got brick and mortar dealers, so your traditional bike shop, or online brands. And increasingly online is more and more common, okay? But there are stores that sell bikes right out of a bike shop. And the way you go kind of can depend on a lot of things. A great one for the RV culture is, how much time do you spend on the road? You might buy a bike at the local bike shop, but if you're never home, that doesn't help you. That you don't have, you think, oh, I'm going to buy it here because if I ever need service, they're right here. But if you're across the country, that doesn't matter so much. Whereas an online sale, you can get customer support around the country. So that's something to consider if you're highly mobile, especially for a large portion of the year. And what value do you get for the money you spent, regardless? So you can really get good service from an online company. So some questions that you might want to consider before purchasing. Does it have a hub motor or a mid-drive motor? Keep in mind the pluses and minuses of those two I talked about earlier. You're going to get more power and efficiency out of the mid-drive, but at greater expense, right? A hub drive motor is less expensive. How powerful is it? That's typically rated in watts. So you'll see anything from 250 up to some are 1,000 watts. And again, it's one of those things you get what you pay for, right? If you want a more powerful motor, you're going to pay for it. So what type of electrical assistance does it have? Does it have pedal assist, throttle, or both? So pedal assist means that there is some kind of switching mechanism at the pedals that senses your pedaling activity and will activate the motor when you're pedaling. You can get different, and any bike that has pedal assist has a number of selections, so you can get a little bit of assist, medium level assist, a lot of assist, and something along that spectrum. Throttle is either twist style or a thumb activated thing, and it doesn't matter if you're pedaling or not. That's the switching mechanism. Some bikes have both, and I personally think that both gives you the greatest amount of versatility. So you can either pedal a lot and get a ton of exercise, or you can just not pedal at all and use the throttle. A perfect example of that would be the commuter that wants to get to work and not have to take a shower when they get to work. They maybe don't have shower facilities at work, so they throttle on their way in. Before they come home, they change into their workout gear and get a nice workout on the ride home. So definitely something to consider. What type of battery does it come with? So most bikes that you're going to be looking at today are going to have some kind of lithium battery, but the capacity, both in terms of range and voltage, are things to think about. Again, the battery's range. This is a big one. What kind of warranty does it come with? Especially in the online world, there's a pretty broad spectrum. You can have some that they barely mention their warranty because it's virtually non-existent, and other companies have a much more extensive warranty. So it is something to think about. The reality is that any mechanical device is eventually going to need maintenance. It's just the way it is. If parts move, parts can break. So, 4-year, 20,000 mile. Ours is one of the largest in the industry. 4 years. Yeah, it's a big thing. We recognize that you're taking a risk buying online, and one of the ways we want to kind of ease that concern is by offering an extensive warranty.